So, today's episode of Take a Seat is all about Scotland's economic outlook and the opportunities for business growth. We're delighted to welcome our guest, Charandeep Singh. Charandeep is the Chief Executive of the Scottish Chambers of Commerce, coming into post earlier this year. Charandeep has built a strong reputation across business, communications, and public life, and today he joins us to discuss what Scotland's economy needs over the next 5 years. We'll look at findings from SCC's new Conditions for Growth report and what the data tells us about business confidence, investment and jobs, and what practical steps could unlock growth locally. We'll also hear why business voices matter more than ever through the quarterly economic indicator and the survey work that we do regularly with businesses. So, Charandeep, take a seat. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Alison. A delight to be back here in sunny Dundee.
Yeah.
Thank you for the opportunity.
We were just reflecting, wasn't it? 2019, we had some pictures taken with those Urwilly statues. So yeah,
That's
and the
right.
weather was not nearly as nice
No,
as it's been today.
it's a really delightful day today. And I was reflecting on our past engagements here at Dundee and Angus Chamber. And actually, when I was here in 2019, it was for one of your judging panels for your award ceremonies. And I think I was early on Deputy CEO at that time. And I'm really delighted to be back here early on as CEO, so thank you. It's been great, over the years to see your chamber growing from strength to strength, and I think as a whole the network in Scotland is really raising our bar in terms of representing our member interests here in Scotland, but also in Westminster and beyond.
Yeah. And it feels like, and I know this is not true, but it does feel like we're continually in election season, whether it's national, whether that's in London or whether it's Scotland or whether it's local, and actually we've got local elections coming up in the next cycle. But
That's right.
yeah, tell us a little bit about the work that SCC is doing at the moment when it comes to those conditions for growth, what we're looking for.
Well, we are in an election cycle, and it does feel a little bit relentless, I think, in some cases. I think the UK overall, we've gone through quite a lot of democratic participation. It's probably the politest way of positioning it. But actually, it gives us as chambers in Scotland a really good platform to raise what business needs, and a really good platform to share where some of our challenges and issues are, but also what we see as some of the solutions. So whilst it can sometimes feel like Groundhog Day, or it can sometimes feel like there's that UK-wide wonderful woman who is infamous for saying an election, not another one. But it's an important platform for us as chambers to represent our members. And there's a lot of challenges going on in the economy right now, Alison, and you're very close to it here at a local level. And it would not be it would not be right for us to ignore the fact that there are major cost crises going on right now, and businesses are being squeezed at all levels. And some of these are domestic pressures and some of them are international pressures. So kind of gone are the days where you might have been facing pressure from one angle or one side. We're now facing pressures from every angle, and it's on a regular basis. So we've got a lot of companies and members out there that are worried. And we have a role to play as chambers to help them through this period and to see what solutions we can get from government or industry to try and ride this wave. We will come through on the other end, but it is taking quite a long time. And I think our members are telling us that for some they can't survive. For some are making some really challenging decisions. And the economic environment, both here at home and abroad, it is challenging.
Yeah, and I think, this time around more than ever, we're seeing such a lot of changes at the Scottish Parliament level, aren't we? So I think it's the right opportunity for us to engage. And I know that, we've certainly got plans post-election to engage with our new local representatives. Some of them won't be new, some of them may be new, but yeah, just to make sure that they fully understand. And they do, they're close to local issues, I think, but sometimes maybe those business issues, they don't maybe hear so much of those because there's a lot of national noise. So I think it's really important to make sure that we are going to engage with them, because the first 100 days and then the programme for government, really needs quite a bit of participation, doesn't it?
That's right. And actually, I think the new intake of MSPs have a big responsibility on their hands. And hats off to anybody that takes part in democratic elections and puts themselves forward. So they've got a big responsibility to make sure they're representing their constituents. And you'll be hard pressed to find a constituency in Scotland that is not worried about these business issues, whether it's business rates, whether it's how expensive it's now getting to hire people, whether it's our energy costs. Every constituency in Scotland, every business person in Scotland will be talking about these issues. Our customers are talking about these issues. So if any MSP is out there and they'll be joining Parliament, they need to understand that these are not just business issues.
We've been doing some work at a local level with a business and economic forum in the city, and one of the there's 2 or 3 things that are actually really quite positive, I think, that are coming out of these conversations. Businesses are keen to play their part, and I think that stands whether it's at local or at a national level. You know, businesses want to be part of the conversation, but they don't want to come with too many asks. It's as much about what we can do to support. But also, actually, it's been quite interesting because the number one thing that I think feels quite difficult to achieve is that the ask from our businesses is just make it the easiest place to do business. And I'm not sure if we really know what we mean by that, but you know, maybe there's a little bit less bureaucracy, maybe it's, you know, certainly less taxation and kind of resilience. But yeah, if we could become that, that would make us really quite economically powerful, wouldn't it?
Yeah, well, look, Scotland is a great place to do business. We're so ambitious. It's such an exciting place to be. And there's no place in the world that doesn't have its challenges. You know, the role of the chambers is to figure out what those challenges are with our members and to find the solutions. But we can't detract from the fact that we are a great place. And people want to work here, they want to live here, they want to invest here. You know, we've got global investors coming to Scotland and investing, and those are great signs. We've got places in the world that are buying our products and services. We've got great food and drink, great financial services, and those are the strengths of our nation and the strengths of our business community. But in terms of your point around we want to make it an easier place to do business, well, one of the ways that governments can do that, both Scottish Government and UK Government, is to try and limit their in-year policy announcements or their in-year policies that increase costs on business. So, you know, and why is that important? Well, if a business is making a plan for 2028 and they're looking to invest and grow and hire more people and maybe open up a new office or maybe look at a new international market, but if one of the governments have decided that next year we're going to increase your tax, well, our 2028 plan is now probably going to is not going to go to plan. So I think those types of elements government can control. Work with us to understand what policy announcements do they want to introduce, go through the pros and cons of it with the business community, and co-create where these policies do have to be implemented. We might not agree with them all, but at least give us the time and space to plan for it. And that applies to both Holyrood and Westminster.
Well, so you think you knew my next question then? You've teamed me up very well. What does the next 5 years look like then for Scotland?
Yeah, look, chambers are naturally very optimistic, right? We are, a centuries-old institution. We've navigated as a global chamber network so many challenges and opportunities, and I think for us, for the chamber network now, the Chamber of Commerce movement, the biggest opportunity that we have and biggest challenge as well is around technology and AI. You know, so if you were to look at what were chambers of commerce leading on and looking at 100 to 200 years ago, it was things like the Industrial Revolution, it was factory automation. We're now kind of talking about similar things, although it's technological automation or it's new digital technology. So we've got to understand what those are. We've got to help our members understand how they can take advantage of those and help business growth locally. But we also know it comes with challenges. It's also going to come with a change in how we work and how we operate and what our communities look like. We don't know what that will be in the end, but we've got to understand it and not resist, but actually embrace and learn how we can maximise these technologies for the benefit of our communities and our businesses. But we also know that there are continuous challenges that will seep into the next Parliament. So we have an ongoing energy crisis right now. We have costs that are mounting on businesses. So these are issues that are going to continue into the next Parliament. I think for us as a business community, we need to be much more clearer to the next Scottish Parliament as to what does profitability look like in Scotland for the majority of SMEs, which are the backbone of our economy. So if we're in a place now where profitability is being squeezed, and we know it's being squeezed because we survey our members every quarter. So you do, Alison, with your Dundee and Angus Chamber business community, and throughout Scotland we run the quarterly economic indicator, which is one of the country's longest running economic surveys of its kind. So it's a big asset that we have as a Chamber of Commerce. And through that survey, we know, through the data and the trends analysis, that cash flow is being squeezed, profitability is being squeezed. So we need to reverse that trend in the next 5 years. And I think if there's a job for us to do as Chambers of Commerce leaders and working with government and Parliament, is to actually understand that the last 5 years, the important trends have been in decline. And I would include investment into that as well, because businesses are scared to invest. And where they want to invest, they can't, because that money is now going into paying for our energy bills. Or our employer costs have increased, and we're now having to, put that money into that bucket. So I think if we're focused on how to reverse that trend and start increasing the profitability of our SMEs, that can only be a good thing for our local communities, but also for our national economy.
And just to sort of, I wanted to also say a little bit of a thank you from us. So when you were looking at the national document that you were going to use for Scotland's plan for growth, we were able to get our own copy of it, which is great. So, obviously by the time I think this comes out, we'll have had our hustings event, and we're going to use that Dundee and Angus document to kind of inform some of those discussions.
Excellent.
So look forward to making sure that the local politicians and candidates that we're talking to understand what our kind of key asks are.
That's right.
Which is great. Yeah,
it's great, and actually that goes to the heart of what Chambers are about. We've got strong local chambers with strong local business communities, and your needs should feed into our national economic story. And that's the role of Scottish Chambers of Commerce, to make sure that we've got a strong link into your local chamber through your leadership and the insights from your members, but to make sure that Scottish Parliament and Scottish Government understand that all of Scotland has opportunity, all of Scotland has a growth story, and all of Scotland needs investment.
Yeah, and I think, I know that the Chamber network as a whole is really very good at getting the voice of our members front and centre. So I suppose that's the other thing that, I guess we know this because we've been around a bit, a little bit. But, I know that our members have fed into a lot of the work that Scottish Chambers does. We've had members that have joined us and said, I really like all the services you have, but actually we want our voice to be important. That's they've played a part in some of the national forums, or when there's been a call for evidence or kind of expertise, then Scottish Chambers will come to us and say, who do you know that has got an expertise in this? So I suppose that's the other thing, the other call out to our members that we sometimes forget about, is that they may be members of a local chamber, but they can get involved in your board. They can get involved in some of the national policy groups. That's right. Yeah, it's always worth.
And this happens everywhere, right? We're all human. So on a day-to-day level, we all focus on our jobs, focus on our work, and we focus on our business. And I think there's a lot of great things about the Chamber network, and I can sit here all day and talk about it. But I think if there's one thing that I would add just from what you've just said there is the chambers give us a chance to just to pause, to lift our head up, to see what's going on in Scotland, the UK, and around the world. And in all of those spheres, the Chambers has a representation and a voice. We've got a voice in Holyrood through the Scottish Chambers. We have great links in with Westminster. Our colleagues at British Chambers are doing a power of work there as well. We also have our colleagues in the International Chamber of Commerce, and we've got a voice in that too. In fact, just a few days ago, I was meeting with the Secretary General of the International Chamber of Commerce, John Denton, and he represents our interests at the G7 and G20 and other global forums. So we are the world's largest business network. So we've got the best platform to share the opportunities and to tackle the challenges, but we've also got the best network for new business opportunities. And that's why one of the areas that I'll be leading on in my tenure as CEO is expanding our international portfolio and international opportunities, both in new markets abroad, but also working with international investors and buyers to come to Scotland. And Alison, you were part of our early pilot work with our trade missions to the UAE. And you'll be delighted to know we'll be bringing some of that work back, and we've learned a lot from the early programs that we ran, and you'll hopefully see more opportunities for your members. And that's a really important part, is the International Network is there to represent our member views, but it's also there to find new opportunities for our members to grow.
So before we end the episode, this is a thing we do with all our podcast guests, where we put you on the spot a little bit.
Oh dear, right, let's try our best on this one.
A quick set of questions we call key questions, based on obviously the fact that we're here at 37 City Key. So
very good.
Tell us, what is the best or worst piece of advice that you've ever actually followed?
Oh, that I've ever followed? Well, that's a good question. That's a good question. The best advice, actually, and I will bring this back to a local level. Okay, so firstly, it's a good question, and I'm delighted I'm able to share this with you here in Dundee in particular. So, as part of my work at Scottish Chambers of Commerce over the last several years, I've been lucky enough to represent the Scottish Chambers network in different markets and different locations. And one such trip was to Delhi in 2019. And on that trip was one of your local business people, Mr. Tim Allen. And when we were in India, we had a really packed schedule. It was back-to-back meetings over a 4-day period. And one of the pieces of advice he gave me during that trip, and bearing in mind as well, probably one of my first international trips at kind of higher level. And when we were looking at the schedule together, we were reviewing the meetings and what was coming up. And the first thing Tim said to me was, so the rule is, Charandeep, whatever time the meeting is, you arrive 15 minutes before and 15 minutes before that meeting. Because we can never be late for a meeting, especially when we're representing the Chambers or SEC, and at that time Scottish Chambers, with our new potential partners and stakeholders. And my schedule didn't allow for such a rule. I think I'd allowed for maybe 10 minutes, which is a big learning for me, because in a country like that you've got to plan a lot. So I think the best advice that I still follow it to this day, is arrive 15 minutes before your meeting, but whatever time that is, add another 15 minutes to that.
Next one, what's a completely useless skill you have that you're secretly proud of?
Useless skill?
Yes.
Oh wow, never been asked that before.
Do you want me to make that useful?
Well, you've answered it now.
Sure have.
Well, I would hope that we all have useful skills.
Yes.
And I would assume if it's a skill, it should be useful in any case.
Yeah. Well, we'll
useless,
see.
I'm sure I've got loads of useless skills, Alison. I guess one that I've probably perfected as a result of this job more than anything else. So one of the things that I started when I started kind of corporate life was to have a second phone. So to have a kind of separate phone for my personal and a second phone for my kind of day-to-day work, because it can get quite busy, and a bit of separation is always helpful. So on the weekends it's very good, because I know if my personal phone is ringing, it's just fine. Although more folks have now got my personal phone, so I don't think the separation's worked as well as it did at the start. But anyway, that's fine. But I have perfected what it probably is a totally useless skill, having two phones at the same time and being able to tweet or LinkedIn on two different devices. But the trick is to use a swipe keyboard. So you can just use your thumb and use it. So I can have two phones and walk at the same time. And my team back at the ranch I think a few are trying to learn how to do that skill. But the trick is the swipe keyboard. But loads of people are not quite a fan of that. But it's probably my secret skill.
I'm an admirer of it, but it sort of slightly blows my mind when I watch people do it. So,
with two phones, it's maybe not the safest thing to do, so I'm not encouraging anyone to start doing it. But I would definitely put it under a useless skill.
Brilliant. Well, that's one I've not heard of, and I like it. That's a good one. What about one habit that's made the biggest difference to your work life?
That's a very good one. So I would say, and this has been quite a consistent habit actually now that over the last several years, is during the day at least once is to leave the office and get outdoors, whether for a short walk or a bit of fresh air or if I'm having a coffee, I'll maybe have that outside. I think there's a mindset change when you kind of get up from your desk or your office and you kind of go outdoors. I think that nature element is really important. And when we're working in the way that we are now, which is so much more is being demanded from us, being able to pause and get outdoors is really important.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots and lots and lots we could have covered off, isn't there? So, yeah. So, is this your first podcast since you became chief executive in your post?
This is officially
we like
the first
to do
podcast
first
in my role as CEO, and I'm really delighted it's here at Dundee.
Brilliant.
It was one of my first stops when I became deputy, and it's basically one of my first stops now as CEO. So thank you, Alison, for all your hard work as well.
Really appreciate you coming in and doing this. So it's been super interesting to hear more about the Conditions for Growth report. We didn't even give it a wave, so I feel like you should, at least... Yes.
Thank you, Alison. That's a plan for growth for Scotland's business community.
Brilliant. Thanks, Charandeep. And it's important, I think, that we shape that conversation for what the next 5 years looks like. So hearing Charandeep's perspective on how Dundee and Angus are performing, alongside that wider national picture, and the importance of clear, achievable policy priorities, has been incredibly valuable, and hopefully everyone's taken something away from today's conversation. Of course, this is a reminder of just how important it is for businesses to have their voices heard through initiatives like the Quarterly Economic Indicator Survey and other snap polls and other things that we would really like businesses to get involved in. The next survey's fieldwork will launch on 11th of May, so keep an eye out for it and don't miss your opportunity to make your voice heard. Thanks again for your time, Charandeep. Don't forget to get involved in the conversation, folks. Thanks for listening.